This great world is education.
Today's guest is from the world of education.
Today's guest is an artist, philanthropist, and the founder of Suki 222, a nonprofit organization based in the USA and working remotely in 24 countries to ensure clean water, adequate nutrition, and secure living spaces.
His vision is the world coming together to ensure each individual has daily dignified access to clean water, nutrition, and secure living spaces.
His project is to accomplish these essential goals and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
Please welcome Charles Holsopple.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Haruka.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
guys.
to meet you.
Jumping right into the first question, could you briefly tell us about yourself and your past achievements?
Well, as I say, I was born in Tampa, Florida in 1953. I live in the house next door to where I grew up, where my mother is 106 and lives there today.
Wow.
So I went to school there. I ended up, when I got out of high school, the Vietnam War was active, and I ended up as a medic in the Army. And I got out and I became a lumber commodity trader, buying from sawmills in different parts of the world. And I did some real estate investment. So that was takes me up to 2007 when I became a human rights advocate.
And how did you jump into that field?
Well, I really didn't like my job, right? I was a kind of a creative kid, but I got in life, right? I make a living and get an investment and make a car and pay the insurance and do all of that. And then that was my responsibility. When I got to the point I was about 50, I didn't have to make money. I didn't have to go to work. So I made the sacrifice to I had an idea to build inflatable shelter that could be coated and rigidized and make a little house. And I took that to the University of Akron, their polymer science school. And I asked them if it was feasible to do, because we need hundreds of millions of structures around the world. And this was just an inflatable, and then you coat it, it becomes rigid. You take some local material and replace the air cavity. And pretty soon you have, it's insulated, you make it so it doesn't catch on fire. You do all the proper engineering. So I asked these 4 department chairs and 2 patent attorneys, is this feasible? And they told me, yes, but it may take 25 years. So as I said, I had got myself professionally to the point that I didn't have to work. So I said, well, what else am I going to do for the next 25 years if I have an idea that can revolutionize the world and provide housing to hundreds of millions of people? So I took a sabbatical, and we did or at least applied for working with the National Science Foundation. But I realized it didn't matter what we build, concrete wall. I would rather have a silk sheet rather than a concrete wall between friends than a concrete wall between enemies. So I went back and said, I have to ask a question of people to say, are you better off if your neighbor has adequate shelter and adequate food and adequate water? And I think, are you better off if your neighbor has food, water, and shelter? Yeah, it's a better world, right? So that's what I set out to do, and I actually started measuring things. And I looked at the World Health Organization, how much water they said was required for life, and how much food, and how much shelter. And then I came up with this 222 idea, because that's how much water is needed. And we've all heard of the nutritional calories.
So that's why you are a founder of Suki 222. And then what does the Suki 222 meaning from? Yeah.
Well, I was calling it Project 222. So if you look back a number of years ago, and there's an organization that goes and works in Africa called Project 222, but they're not us, right? So, and then I was talking to a gentleman in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and he said he had an organization called Suki. And then he told me it meant happy in Nepal, right? And then he had made an acronym, Sustainable, Unified, Kinetic, Holistic Initiative. And I'm thinking, wow, that if everybody's going to have food, water, shelter, that fits. So then I changed the name to Suki and kept the 222.
Do you know what the 222 means exactly?
I do. It means that we're all better off if each of us have a minimum of 2 gallons of clean water per person. 2,000 nutritional calories and 200 cubic feet of shelter. That's just enough to, sleep in, lock your stuff in, and return to each night. It's important that someone has some place that they can return to secure tenure. Yeah.
So did you always have kind of a passion for sustainability and helping others?
Well, I grew up in a time of extreme unfairness to minorities in the South. And my parents told me there's no difference between people, but society was different. So I've always kind of had a slant that we're not really living up to our potential if we are not getting along and using each other's strengths.
Right. And how does your project work? And what is your vision and goal with Suki 222?
It's a great vision, I'll tell you that. I haven't found anybody that doesn't like it. Focusing on clean water, everybody that I've talked to agrees that we're all better off if we have food, water, shelter. The 222 gets their idea, but how do you put that in practice? I put it on LinkedIn. I put my mission in something of a white paper and explaining 222, and got a call from John Noonamaker of Veterans Without Borders with an O. And John said they were using a polymer 0.1 micron filter to take out the bacteria that makes people sick with typhoid, cholera, diarrhea, dysentery. And those are the leading cause of illness and a major cause, the leading cause of death in the areas that we're working and on the young children. So I started using this filter that takes out the bacteria, and I sent 10 over to Ghana to a gentleman I'd met on LinkedIn. And then I sent another 70 or 80 over there and had miraculous results where the children weren't getting sick, the parents weren't getting sick, they were coming to school, they weren't having to purchase bottled water. So then I said, well, if I'm the 222 guy, Charles 222, let me do that in 22 countries. Let me send a test over and to clinics and schools where 50 people it's gravity fed. You just pour the water in the bucket and out comes clean water. As long as you keep that filter clean. We were talking about sustainability earlier. It will last 10 years or 1 million gallons. And so I said, well, let me see if I can do that in these 22 countries. So I met people over the internet, and then you'll see some photos that have the pictures on the t-shirts, and we got the buckets and labeled the buckets and numbered each filter. And then you take a picture of that filter in place so you have GIS tracking to monitor the benefits and the impact of that filter. So the idea now, we've done it in over 22 countries, is to expand to at least 20,000 filters. And that 20,000 filters, 50 people per filter, you're looking at 1 million. But then you go, well, how much is that going to cost, right? Well, the filter is each filter is under $25. And then you have to have a bucket. And depending on the size of the bucket, a $10 bucket will do, right? You put those two together, that's all the material other than the label. So then you have to distribute it. So those 20,000 filters distributed in any of these countries I've operated would be distributed for $50 a filter. So then you say, well, how long does the filter last? And we talked about 1 million gallons or 10 years. So that works out to $1 per person at this school to have water, 2 gallons each day. And if it lasts 10 years, it's 10 cents per person per year to have clean water free of cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and diarrhea. And we can do that at the global scale for 1 billion people for $1 billion, creating tens of thousands of jobs.
Sounds amazing, yeah. So when you actually engage with other people in your project, what impact does have on you? Like I saw some photos of the children's face and they smiles.
Right, and some videos. I work primarily Africa and Asia. And so the time difference is when I get up in the morning, they've already been working for a while. and they've been visiting those schools. So I get the pleasure of seeing those children, but also their mothers and fathers. Some of them have never had clean water. So when you look at some of those videos and you see those beautiful people, and it's meaningful, right? And you know how when you get thirsty and you get a good drink of water, how good it is? Imagine having that and knowing you're going to have it day after day and be able to cook with it. And one of the big, great advantages of this is they don't have to boil their water. So they don't have to collect the firewood. And talking about sustainable, then if you don't have to burn your forest, you have more oxygen, a better chance for rain. So we look at all aspects of what we're doing, not just the water filters, but that's transformational.
And I actually did some research and saw your LinkedIn profile. I read your vision is that the world come together through science and human rights. So how do you think science and human rights, these two intertwine? And by science, are you possibly referring to environmental science?
Excellent question. And all sciences. My vision on LinkedIn when I first put it out there is to bring together a cross-discipline, collaborative, multinational to work in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And they have 160 some indicators on how we're doing for each individual on the planet as well as future generations. The indicators, all 167 of them, have common denominator. If you don't have clean water, we don't have to worry about your education or anything else because you don't have enough water to survive. So the scientific approach is I use what science says, can you live without it? Can you live without food? Can you live without shelter in those conditions? If you can't, then it's a human right because life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, we've all heard that, right? And does life require clean water?
Yeah.
So clean water must be a human right. So, but then how much? And 2 gallons is what the World Health Organization, 7.5 liters to 15 liters, I think it is, depending on conditions. So it's just a way to bring in that intellectual and that empathetic understanding to society and say, wait a minute, it's affordable and it's beneficial to my heart and my mind. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you more about your project. So could you tell us about your current and future project?
The current project, for instance, the impact it's having, those filters in a orphanage in Nairobi in Kenya. A friend of mine, Albertine Scray, Mumsy Tutu, she has a foundation that works in Illinois, here in the US, in Kenya, and primarily in Cameroon. When she was in Kenya, she took 2 filters, or she took about 60 filters, but put 2 in an orphanage with about 80 some children, half of them under 5 years old. She had been paying the truck to come by and fill up her water bottles, 3 bottles, less than 15 gallons of water. She was paying $12.50 a day. The children sometimes only eat once a day, right? We're in remote areas of Kenya. So now she's saving $12.50 a day. The filter lasts 10 years, right? So you figure it, 50,000. And then she has 20 times the amount of water. So the older kids weren't able to drink that 15 gallons of water. She had to use it for cooking and the younger children. So now all of the kids are drinking clean water. And she's saving all that money, so they're eating better, right? And she's not having to spend money on the medical bills for the children that get sick. Another example of the project we did in Senegal, I got a call from the gentleman that helped us, the help team, as a matter of fact. They have their own organization. They help in different African countries. That's the way we do it. We work with existing nonprofits, and they do the hard work within country, and I've just been supplying them the materials and the funding. But he got a call in Senegal from the mayor of a small town and said, look, you're causing a problem. We have too many kids at school because they're not sick. We need more classrooms and we need more desks. So it's both health as well as education, because we really need to educate all, whatever age we are, we need to figure out what existential threats we face and what the best practices are that we have the power, the technology to make that.
This episode will be available on YouTube this coming Saturday. For details, please check out our Facebook page. Next, more exciting materials to show you all.